Yeah, the talks were taking place on Wednesday. They lasted under an hour. The unions walking out of that meeting with French Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne because they said they would start with a discussion about scrapping the reform, at least scrapping the raising of the retirement age. And Elizabeth Borne saying we'll start by saying that we need to keep this reform in place because it is of beneficial to the French economy. Let's listen in now to what Elizabeth Borne had to say.
It was a respectful exchange where everyone was able to express themselves and listen to each other. I listened to each of the trade union organizations. I heard their disagreements on raising the retirement age, and I was able to repeat to them my conviction and that of my government of the need for this reform.
Yeah, so you can see Elizabeth Borne just reiterating the government position that has been the position since January, that they want to continue with this reform because it is needed to make France's pension system financially sustainable in the future. But as you pointed out, since the 19th of January, we have been seeing here in France week after week of protests, marches and strikes. They're ongoing again. The bins here in the French capital have once again not been collected as garbage workers are now back on strike. And we're seeing those demonstrations continue here in Paris. They were going to be taking place whether or not the talks took place with Elizabeth Borne this week. The unions had already said the 11th day of mass mobilisation would be the 6th of April, and we are expecting at the end of this day the unions to announce their next date. They say they will continue with this until the government scraps its reforms, which ministers have no intention of doing.
Ross, we've just been reporting on President Macron and his visit to China. So he's clearly out of the country at the moment. He's not in Paris, he's not in France. Is that going to be a welcome distraction or something of, given these pictures, a political mistake?
Last month, in March, Jamie, Emmanuel Macron went down south in France to launch his water plan to combat the serious problems of drought that we have here in France, and he was criticised for focusing on another policy issue when his detractors said he should be focusing on the pensions crisis. Emmanuel Macron says there's lots of other national and international issues we need to be getting on with. We can't be hamstrung by continuing to discuss the pension reform. One of those international issues is trying to reset relations with the Chinese president. Obviously, he's there at the moment in China with Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, continuing that work at a high geopolitical level to continue to have those international discussions as he continues to have national policy discussions. Earlier in the week, he was discussing improving the policy in France towards ends of a life and assisted suicide and euthanasia. And so he wants to continue to discuss other policies outside the pension reform, which he is leaving pretty much to his Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne.